When you make a movie now, I mean, you've had such a career.
Yeah.
When you make a movie now, like, what motivates you at this point in your life? Like, how do you decide, let's hit the green light on this one?
Yeah, there are things that speak to me, and they speak for a long time. It's I remember when I was a kid in high school, I was studying English. And they said, well, where did the English language come from? And they talked about, wow, it came from this old guttural German, Old Norse that the Vikings brought across. And I was thinking, well, that's cool, the Vikings, you know. And then immediately I start thinking, man, somebody should I want to make a film about Vikings, and they only speak in Old Norse, because if they say, you know, if they speak English all of a sudden,
right,
you're not buying it. But if they're speaking some guttural language, you're sort of scared by them, and it's like, that's scary to me. And then I said to myself, I'm 17 years old. Why am I thinking about making films about Vikings? I don't know anything about making films and not much about Vikings. So why the hell am I even thinking about that? But that was something that was early on, was like a drive, I guess, to sort of depict things like that. So I did films in other languages, in Mayan and in Aramaic and in Latin.
Yes.
You know. So, and there's a power to that. I noticed when I was young, I used to go and watch a lot of foreign films. And I watched French movies, right? Or German or whatever they were, Spanish. I'd watch them and I'd think, wow, the acting's great in those. And it seemed better because of the subtitles. Because more believable somehow. I don't know.
Right, because you're not hearing insincerity in their voice because you don't even understand what they're saying.
No.
Yeah, you just feel the emotions in the words.
And it also it has to take your attention, because you have to do another function. You have to read.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that sort of maybe blinds you to the flaws in the filmmaking, perhaps. So, you know, hey, it's a great trick.
Yeah.
It's obfuscation.
There's a thing about reading it while you're watching it. It's like an added element of concentration. Mm-hmm. You know, like subtitled movies, you feel like you're a smarter person watching a movie where you're reading it as well.
Yeah. And there's something about the written word that's like, it's a pretty interesting thing to throw into the mix. I know when I first started it was kind of confusing, but then I got really good at it. And I think, especially with something like The Passion that I did, the written word was very important, because it was, you know, you got all those books, the Bible, you know, you've got the different Gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was going on.
That was a crazy movie, because it was a great movie, but it seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
Oh, yeah. No, there was...
which I thought was very strange. There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like, people didn't like that you were making it, it seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it. And I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're going to get people going, because...
Of course.
It's big subject matter, and it's like... you know, and my contention is, you know, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind, and that for all our ills and all the things in our fallen nature, it was a redemption. So, you know, and I believe that, you know, I actually am. You know, I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, you know. So I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So depicting that was an honor, but it was also, you got the daylights beat out of you for it.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah.
Christianity is the one religion where people... all these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, you know, whatever it represents, colonialism, you know, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure, it's gotten a bad rap. And people do feel free to beat up on it. Mm-hmm. Even I do when I see it's like, you know, when it's not fair, or when I think it's off.
Right.
Know? Like, you know, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters.
Yes.
Or, you know, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean.
Or the Pope.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
Oh, not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, yeah. It's not great.
I thought he was like the more progressive pope.
Oh, he's very progressive, yes.
But he's covering up for stuff as well. Well, they all are. I mean, it's a dark institution in a lot of ways because it's history. Mm-hmm.
Well, the institution, it was instituted by Christ, but that doesn't mean that it can't be flawed. And there's a school of thought that says it isn't what it purports to be anymore. It's moved away from what it was intended to be and what it is. Almost, there's a guy called Bishop Vigano who says it's a counterfeit parallel church. And it's running an entirely different religion. I actually don't adhere to a post-conciliar church. I adhere.
Can you define what that means?
Okay. There was an event that happened in the 60s. First, there was an event in the Vatican where they elected John the 23rd Pope, right, in 1958. I was 2 years old, right? He was elected, and it was a very funny thing that happened in the conclave. Usually there's white and black smoke that goes out of the chimneys to tell you, we have a pope, habemus papam, and the white smoke came out. And everybody cheered, and they went crazy. And then about a half an hour later, black smoke came out. That never in history has that happened, that the white smoke came out, and then the black smoke.
So white smoke means we found a new pope. Black smoke means no pope.
That's right. They'd have votes, or there'd be one reason or another they'd have a round in the conclave, and black smoke would come out many times maybe. Maybe it would take 2 weeks. But never was it known that white smoke came out, then black smoke came out.
So what was the scenario?
That somebody was elected, and that maybe something else happened, and he was pushed aside and someone else was put in. So it was
power struggle.
Some kind of power struggle. And, of course, the man who came out was a man called Angelo Roncalli, and he was John the 23rd. Now, it's interesting to note that never had a pope taken the name of another pope ever before in history. But this man took the name of a known anti-pope from the 15th century that Cosimo de' Medici put in there as his own man. I'll get you in the chair, and then everything will be rosy. Everything will go good for business, whatever he was putting him in there for, some corrupt reason. But, and there have been corrupt men in that place before. I mean, there's Alexander VI and Julius II and Sixtus IV. I mean, some of these guys are, they're not saints. So he took the name of a known anti-pope from the 5th century who actually said, yes, I'm an anti-pope. Sorry, I'm not the right guy, because there was more than one, and he confessed to being, and he wanted to, square things with the Almighty, I guess, so he confessed to being an anti-pope. And so he took the same name as that guy, John the 23rd. So it's interesting, don't you think? I mean, why would he do that?
Well, whenever you have that kind of power, like I'm sure you've been to the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yes, it's huge.
It's so crazy. When you're walking around, you see just the massive amount, just the dollar value in the art that they possess.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
It's crazy, yeah. And, it's a very small country. It's a country.
Yeah, it's a country inside of a small city.
Yeah.
Because Rome's not the biggest city.
No.
And then it's got a country inside the city.
Yeah.
With walls around it.
Sure.
And you can't extradite people.
Yeah, pretty weird.
How convenient.
Yeah. Even Ratzinger, he didn't drive from the Vatican to the other place. He flew.
Ooh.
And it was only a little while, because who knows why. I don't know.
Well, he was wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he had done, one of the things that he had done was he had moved a priest that had molested 100 kids, and he moved him to some new place where he molested deaf kids.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's the dirtiest, most evil practice that the Catholic Church has been accused of.
I think so, and many institutions as well,
Yeah.
but that is a very bad one. And I think it's all part and parcel of the same corruption that crept in. And when you asked what's the difference between pre-Vatican II, so Vatican II happened, and of course they they took the church and they reformed it, and they changed things in it. And it didn't necessarily agree with everything that went before it. And up to that point, yeah, you could find it agreed with itself. But all of a sudden, you got something else, to the point where now, I mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Really?
He did. The Pachamama. He bought the South American, and he got.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like a South American god, Pachamama.
Why would he do that?
Good question. But he did.
Did he have an explanation for why he did it?
Yeah, it's kind of a weasel-worded thing of like, oh, all religions are just as good as one another. But, if that's his contention.
He shouldn't be the Pope.
No. I mean,
how can you be the Pope if you say all religions are just as good?
Yeah, we all worship, So, yeah, there's the Pachamama. There you go.
So he brought that in.
Yeah, into the Vatican. Then the hierarchy even worshipped. They had a ceremony around it outside.
What?
So, well, that constitutes apostasy.
Yeah.
That's an apostasy move, all right?
Worshipping false gods.
Yeah. That's number one on the Mosaic hit list. You know? Moses goes up on the mountain. He comes back down. People are worshiping a golden calf.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. And for me, that's a departure from... that's called apostasy.
Right.
That's a falling away from it. And the very nature of apostasy means that you have to be part of it to fall away from it. Mm-hmm. So it's an inside job.
Ah. So what do you think there's a motive behind these things?
I don't think you will. Probably.
What do you think it is?
I don't know. But it isn't good. I think we're looking at a world where and this is in the next film I'm going to do. I'm going to try and tackle this question. That there are big realms, spiritual realms. There's good, there's evil, and they are slugging it out for the souls of mankind. And my question is, why are we even important? Little old flawed humanity, why are we important in that process where the big realms are slugging it out over us? And I think there's bigger things at play here. And institutions that purport to touch on the divine are necessarily going to be affected by that slugfest that's going on between good and evil.
Right.
And
sometimes good gives up ground.
Yeah. And maybe not on purpose. Maybe there's some deception involved or self-deception.
Right. Co-opted.
Like every morning when I wake up, I actually pray that I don't deceive myself. Because it's like, your mind is a very funny place. I mean, I've always said, it's your second thought and your first action that you're responsible for. Your first thought, throw it away,
Right. But upon consideration, the second thought is what you're responsible for.
Yeah.
That's the difference between first degree and second degree murder.
There you go.
Right? Right?
There you
it's first
go.
degree, like, I'm plotting this out. And we take that into consideration when we sentence people.
Sure.
Like, if you're a person who you're all of a sudden you're in a fight with a guy, you didn't expect it, and you stab him and kill him, second degree murder.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I'm going to kill this motherfucker, I'm going to find out where he is, and I'm going to go get him, first degree.
Sure. I planned a lot of murders in my life,
Yeah.
We all have. Yeah, in your head, you plan the murder and you think, well, that's not a very good idea. But I think I could get away with it.
Right. There's the second thought. Yeah. Sure. That is interesting that we take that into consideration.
Yeah.
That we do. Like, if you've had time to think about it, you're a different kind of person than person who acts in the act.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're in your animal
act of
brain.
Passion. Yes.
And I found this out. I actually spent a long time in my animal brain, which is a very horrible place to be. And
when you say that, what do you mean by you spent a long time in your animal brain?
You're in flight or fight.
Right.
All the time. You don't even sleep. It's like really not a good place to be. And if anybody looks at you the wrong way, you want to bite them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you say and do things that are socially unacceptable. And, I went and got a brain scan by this guy called Daniel Amen, who's this brain guy. He's against all psych meds and stuff, but he thinks like, let me have a look at your brain. And he put a radioactive tracer in me.
Whoa.
And to photograph my brain. He
Right,
works with a lot
MRI,
of,
right?
Yeah, he works with a lot of football players and guys who've
Okay.
had brain injuries. Man, it's thirsty in here. But, so he looked at my brain and he was like, and he opens the file and I'm in there with the guy and he looks up and he goes, "Are you okay?" And he goes, first he went like this. And I said, "What?" And he went, "Are you okay?" Like that. And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And he came over and he sat next to me, but very slowly and cautiously. And he says, "No, you're not." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You got the worst case of PTSD I've ever seen." And I said, "You mean like even worse than guys in war and shit like that?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he says, "You're not okay."
Jesus Christ.
And I was like, I started to well up, like, no, I'm not. It's like,
Oh, boy.
and it was, he had a very miraculous and great remedy for it, which was to eat a bunch of fish oil, vitamin B complex, and get into a hyperbaric chamber for 40 sessions. But make sure you do at least 2 or 3 a week. It fixed my head.
Really?
Yeah, it got me out of that wacky place,
So it was something to do with nutrition and oxygen and...
Yeah. And your brain is neuroplasticity. He explained neuroplasticity to me and how, okay, you could get brain damage and like holes in your head and all, concussion. I used to play rugby. And I've been knocked out on the field a couple of times,
That explains a lot. Yeah.
And so you can actually heal the holes in your head. It looked like Swiss cheese. It's like horrible. There's a lot of these football players get like that too. The poor guys, I mean, they get depressed and they,
Oh, yeah. Hormonal imbalance, pituitary glands fucked up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
not producing testosterone or human growth hormone correctly.
That's correct.
Yeah, depression, low energy.
Yep.
Irritability.
Irritability, you want to kill somebody, it's like terrible
Yeah.
thing, and it's just not socially acceptable. Plus, I don't want to go to prison.
Yeah.
So-
Well, the rugby, I bet that's a giant factor.
Yeah, I played from like 13 to probably in my late teens, and you get knocked around a little
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
bit. No helmet,
Well, people don't realize, like, even shots to the chest cause brain damage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what people are realizing now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and like I'm addicted to the UFC, right? I love it. But I know that these guys I feel kind of sorry for them.
I do as well. Yeah.
And one of the guys, I knew one of the guys fairly well. And usually I'm pretty immune to but he was in there and he was fighting against Volkanovski. It was Brian Ortega. And he was getting his ass handed to him in one fight. He almost got him a couple of times, but
Yeah, I almost submitted him twice.
Yeah, I know. But because I knew Brian, it was like my child. It was like my son was in there.
Right.
I almost started crying. I was
Yeah.
and it got to me. I was like, I should probably feel like this about all these guys, but I don't know them as well.
It becomes a problem for me when I'm friends with a guy, and
Yep.
then also I see when they're on the tail end of their career and they can't take shots anymore. And then when you talk to them, you recognize the speech patterns are slurring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met Muhammad Ali when he was in a chair,
Oof.
And man, I don't know if I could even tell this story. What he said was so funny, but he was still in there, and he was still a little devil. And he was like, and he was still fucking with people.
Of course.
But it was like, I can't tell this.
You can't?
No, man.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Footnote it. Tell me later.
I'll tell you later. It's funny. But it was my assistant, Is what he said to my assistant. It was like so funny. And then he said it, and we all were like, whoa. And then I looked at him, and he was just laughing. He was laughing his ass off. So he was still all in there, but it was hard. I guess he had the damage of being punched.
Yeah, it's trauma-related Parkinson's disease.
Yes.
Very common for
Oh,
fighters.
my God. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not good.
No.
I got knocked out when I was in a fight when I was like 20, and it was like knockout, like out, and it was I woke up in the hospital. Not good.
No. Well, a few of those will explain a lot.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And we didn't know that, back then. That's why it always drives me crazy in a movie when someone gets hit over the head with a gun and knocked out, and then 5 minutes later they're fighting and they're fine. It's
Or shot in the
Yeah.
arm. I gotta kill you. That always makes me laugh too. But we used to do it.
Well, you kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
part of the whole thing of telling a movie. You gotta.
Sure. I mean,
Suspension of disbelief.
Michelle Docker even brains Mark Wahlberg with a fire extinguisher
Yeah.
at one point. It's
Yeah.
he's back. You know.
Brains him, shoots him.
Oh yeah.
It's
He's
a
a
lot.
cockroach. You can't kill him. It takes a lot more. You'll find out.
Yeah. But people used to think that concussions are just something you recover from. Like, no big deal. You get a
Yeah.
concussion, take a break for a little while, you'll be fine. You might not be fine.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
I got a concussion at my daughter's wedding. This is really weird, okay? So she's getting married a great guy. They got a great family. And a buddy of mine from Australia comes to the wedding. And he goes, he comes up, and I go to hug him. And he ducks down, and he comes up, and he puts his shoulder into the point of my chin. The guy weighs 240. And he puts his shoulder into the point of my chin and knocks me the fuck out.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm like, And like, for the next 4 months, I'm messed up. I have to get like a guy to work cranial, sacral, fix me up and stuff like that. It
Jesus,
really messed me up.
fucking Australians.
Yeah, there you go.
Wild folk.
Worse than Germans, yeah.
They're just wild ex-prisoners.
Yeah. Wild prisoner of Mother England,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
So this story that you want to tell about good and evil, like, do you have a script, or is it just a thing in your head? What is it?
Yeah, it's the resurrection story, but it's not linear, because you can't really. It's hard to understand, so it's got to be put in a framework where you answer a few other questions as well, and you have to juxtapose the event itself against everything else, so that it makes some kind of sense in a bigger picture, which is a hard thing to do. And it took my brother and I and a guy called Randall Wallace, plus my brother and I, took us 6-7 years to write it.
So are you doing this with historians as well? Are you trying to make it?
Yeah, historical stuff. Well, I regard the Gospels as history. It's verifiable history. Some people say, it's a fairy tale. He never existed, but he did. And there are other accounts, verifiable historical accounts outside the biblical ones, that also bear this up, that yes, he did exist. And the other aspect of that is that all the evangelists, the apostles who went out there, every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right.
So that's part of what I'm doing. It's like showing nobody dies for a lie.
Yeah. Well, the resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That is the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief. Yeah, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? Buddha didn't do that shit.
Right.
So.
You believe that was a real event?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What brought you to that belief? Is this something that you've always had, or is it something you studied it and you've come to this conclusion because of the historical accounts? And
yes, I think as a child, one accepts things on faith because you're raised by people who are nice to you and they believe it. And my dad was a pretty smart guy. He was like Mensa smart, like real smart. Like back in 1968, he won Jeopardy, right? And then
Really?
And then they brought all the Jeopardy winners back, and he played all the winners, and he beat all of them too. So he had a mind like a steel trap, and his memory was practically photographic. My memory is pornographic, but it's like his was like, I don't have that kind of mind.
right.
But I'm more like, he did math, and I can't add, but. So as a child,